Hello, it's a pleasure to welcome you back to the studio. You can see the drawing desk is quite busy. I've been playing, of course, and playing means learning. So I want to share with you a few of the things I've learned and show you how I've made the paper vase. I'll make a smaller one today, and the colours are especially mixed to go with and display this piece of dried hydrangea. When I started stitching into paper, I was making holes for the stitching to go through with a needle, pushing it through the paper. Let's see, so like, ow, like this. I just stuck myself in the finger. And I found it was really hard to do. You had to push quite hard, and this finger is getting sore, and these fingers were getting sore because I kept stabbing myself. So I quickly realised that that was a bad idea, and I looked around for another sharp tool to do it with. And I've got my compasses. So I stopped holding onto the paper, put the paper on a tea towel and stabbed into it instead of stabbing with the needle, which is really hard to get through. In fact, that's impossible to get through with the needle without it sticking into my finger as well. I stuck through, I pricked my hole with the sharp point of the compasses, and that's a really lovely tool it's quite a convenient tool to hold, comes to hand very nicely and takes all the danger of injury and effort out of pricking my holes prior to stitching. Anyway, I received a message from Crafty Jude with an even better tool, or a solution for you if you've not got compasses, where she's stuck her needle into a cork. Here it is. So thanks, Jude, for sending me that tip to share. So that's my first learning that I wanted to share with you today. Secondly, a few people have said how difficult it is to make random marks, where I think when you pick up a paintbrush, you sort of expect yourself to be painting. And so with that in mind, I looked around for some things that are not paintbrushes. So just a quick think about mark making, random mark making. Now I do have a brush there, which is not my favourite brush for painting with, because it's quite sort of loose and floppy, and I've never really got on particularly well with this. So already it's becoming not the best painting tool. So maybe it's quite a good random mark making tool instead. So taking, see how it splashes. Oh, that's quite nice already. Marks are pretty random. And then when I use it holding it in a very loose way, I can make some quite pleasing random marks. The other thing that I did, putting the brush down and having a leaf, crispy old leaf, is I found that just dragging the paint around with the leaf made some fabulous marks as well. What else have I got? There we are, it's a feather. I was using the feather to apply masking fluid with, and got quite into the way that feels to make marks. Uncontrolled marks. Very beautiful. I love those. Of course, you can use the feathery end as well. You can really enjoy the the shapes of the marks that this thing makes. So I would let that dry and do the same with some more, with a different colour or more of the same colour. And I've ended up with a collection of sheets of paper, pretty randomly marked. You can see, you can see on this one how I've splashed, just allowing the paint to splash from quite a height. You know, even pour it straight on from the palette. Something I like to do when at the end of the session I've got some paint left over, I will just pour it onto a piece of paper. Sometimes just let it settle where it lands or play into it. I'll tip it up and let it run this way and build up sheets of beautifully marked paper for use in collage or stitching. Great fun. I'm going to put those on one side and show you how I'm going to make this bottle. I'll show you the bottle that I made originally and the things I've learnt from making this first prototype, which is quite a tall bottle. It's just stitched up the sides, got nothing at the bottom. And I made it before I knew how it would behave when it stands. And I found that when it's standing, it's really quite unstable. Especially if I've put some leaves in the top. Oops. So it's not the best, it just falls over. So I looked around and I found a little bottle that fits into the bottom. Because it's quite strong paper, it's wanting to spring shut and it sort of holds itself onto that bottle, and that makes it really stable. It weights the bottom down and gives it a nice stable base. So I measured the diameter of the bottle, which is, I made it 53 millimeters. Drew round it, wrote the measurement down. This was just to figure out what size of piece of paper fits that diameter of bottle. And then I measured the width of the piece of paper that I'd used, which is, width of the whole thing is just over 11 centimetres. So I wrote down 110 millimetres, so approximately 110 millimetres across the width of the bottle, which is pretty much twice the diameter of the jar. Okay, so I figure that a ratio, 1 for the width of the bottle to 2 the width of the paper bottle. Okay, so the jar, I should say, the diameter of the jar. So if I doubled any jar, if I double the diameter of the jar, that should be the width of the paper I need to make a paper bottle. Now I reckon that diameter of this jar is 6 centimetres, 60 millimetres, which means that I need to make a paper bottle 12 centimetres wide, doesn't it? Which means I need 24 centimetres this way, and I've got plenty. So, right, this brings me round to the third thing I wanted to share with you that I've learned, because when I made the first bottle, I used steel dressmaker's pins to hold it together while I made the holes around the edges, which was really tricky. It didn't work very well, to be honest. So I thought, well, I need to rethink that as well, rather than holding it together with pins. Is there a better way to hold it together? So this time I've decided to try using glue to just tack it together along the side, which will be thrown away when I cut the bottle out. So I'll be making the holes to stitch, then cutting the shape out, and then I'll be throwing away the bit that's glued together. So it's just to keep the two sides from slipping around while you're making the holes. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I mean as we carry on. Just along the very edge there. Let's put a weight on that till it dries. The next thing I'm going to do is make a template to give me some guidelines for the shape of the paper bottle. Just using some thin crafting card. So I've measured and marked 12 centimetres across here, because I've worked out from the diameter of the jam jar that the whole paper jar or paper bottle is going to need to be twice the diameter of the little jam jar that's going to keep it stable. So I've measured a halfway mark as well, and a halfway mark up there that I can join together in case I want to make a symmetrical bottle, and also so that I can work out how far the straight side, the straight part of the paper bottle needs to be, because I reckon for this jam jar to fit inside the paper bottle, the two sides need to be straight until they get to the top of the bottle. Then my paper bottle can start to go in. Okay, now I could, so that I've done two straight-ish lines up to there, which is the level of the top of the glass jam jar. So I could taper in sort of fairly symmetrically, the same on each side. Always easier to turn it around to make the curve on the other side symmetrical, and that would be okay. But I fancy with this one making it asymmetrical, so I'm going to take this curve a bit nearer to the centre, and that curve will be less of a curve and will go further away from the centre, so it's going to end there. You'll see that more clearly when I cut out the shape. So it's staying straight to the level of the top of the jam jar, and then taking a big sweep round over there, and then I find it easier to cut it out this way, this side with the more gentle curve. And that's going to be the profile of my papered bottle. So now this glue is dry, you see what I've got is a sleeve, open at both ends, but nice and firmly attached here, so nothing's going to be sliding around while I make the holes. And as long as I make sure that I'm free of where the glue is, it's not going to make any difference to the seam that I'm going to stitch along the side there. So putting out the old tea towel, just getting lots of holes in it, I can place my template there. I think what I'll do is just draw around it, keeping it near to this side where the glue isn't. So I'll just use a pencil line to draw around it. There we are. and I can start making my holes for stitching. So my holes are about, probably about 5mm, half a centimetre from the edge. Okay, you can just about see them, can't you? Do they come right through? Yep, good. I can actually do them again from the other side, just to make sure I've got a nice free hole for the stitches to go through. I've measured and cut a piece of thread twice as long as the height of the paper bottle, so I'm going to stitch up and then back again, so I get a continuous line of stitches. Tie a knot in the end, and this knot is just to stop it slipping out of the hole, and it's going to be tucked away inside the paper bottle. Just take it through one layer. There, the knot's hidden away inside. Picking the odd dog hair out. Okay, stitched all the way up and all the way back on both sides. All the way up, all the way back, and I'll just show you how I finish off, how I knot off at the bottom. made a knot. And tuck the tail inside. There we are. Now I'll cut along my pencil lines. There they are. Quite like on the blue bottle the way I flared out the seams, which just accentuates the stitched seams. So what I did was just separate the two layers of paper and bend them back. It's really strong paper. This watercolour paper, so it'll take a bit of persuading to be the shape you want it to be. Or you could leave the seams flat if you want to. Of course, when you come to a curve like that, you get a ripple in it, but I quite like that. Have a play around with it, decide what shape you want it to be. I feel this fold actually helps it to open up to fit around the jar. Oh dear, look, there's a tail escaped into the seam there. It'll probably be, I can wangle that back through to the inside, I think. Okay. Let's open it up. Okay, and then it stands up by itself, just about. Of course, it's going to go over this jar, which, by the way, is a cocktail cherry jar, in case you wanted to know. And because it's got a jam jar in it, you could put water in the jam jar, the cocktail cherry jar. And it could be for displaying fresh flowers in, or without water, to show off some dried flowers or dried leaves. As you can see, I've added an embellishment to my paper vase in the shape of a handle, which I think is quite effective. It's just cut out of an offcut and stitched onto the top of the bottle. Okay, and I would suggest, if you want to get into making 3D paper sculpture, is that you try making a basic shape. While you're making it, perhaps think about different things you can add to it, or even make it out of some paper that you've stitched into already. And also, I think these would make quite nice presents to put in the post, being flat and lightweight, without the jar inside, of course. And just put that in an envelope, in a stiffened envelope, That would go in the post very easily. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I hope it's given you some ideas and inspiration.